David's heart nearly stopped when he saw the tears streaming down his 18-year-old daughter Maddy's face as she stood trembling in his doorway. The confident young woman who had graduated with a 4.0 GPA and seemed to have her whole future mapped out suddenly looked like the scared little girl he remembered consoling after her parents' divorce 11 years ago. "Dad, I need to tell you something," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the evening quiet of his suburban home. David had always been proud of Maddy. The way she'd handled the divorce with such grace when she was only 7. How she'd adapted to spending 3 weekends a month at his place while living with her mother an hour outside the city. Even when the constant driving became too much and they'd modified their schedule, their daily phone calls had kept them close. She was everything he could have hoped for in a daughter. Brilliant, kind, surrounded by good friends, and dating what he believed was a genuinely nice boy who was studying nursing. But as Maddy's words tumbled out between sobs pregnant due in January, her mother had kicked her out. David felt his world shift beneath his feet. His baby girl, who had deferred her scholarship to take community college classes and work, was now facing a reality that would change everything. The weight of responsibility settled on David's shoulders like a familiar coat. Without hesitation, he wrapped Maddy in his arms and said the words that would define their relationship for years to come. "Of course you can stay. You'll never stop being my baby, and if this is what's going to happen, I'm here to support you." But David wasn't naive. He'd raised one child already and knew the realities. He laid out his expectations with loving firmness. He'd help with childcare for work and school, but not for socializing. Maddy would continue working and studying. If the boyfriend abandoned ship, which David had seen happen too many times, she'd need to file for child support. And once she recovered from childbirth, she'd resume her household responsibilities alongside caring for her baby. To David's amazement, both Maddy and her boyfriend returned the next day with a detailed budget and thoughtful responses to every concern he'd raised. The tiny bedroom next to Maddy's room, currently housing a treadmill David never used, would become a nursery. It felt surreal, but also somehow right. His daughter needed him, and he wouldn't fail her. What David hadn't anticipated was how dramatically this decision would fracture his relationship with Vera, his girlfriend of 2 years who had moved into his house just months earlier. Vera, at 37, had been clear from the beginning. She didn't want children of her own, and David didn't want any more. Their relationship had been perfect in its simplicity. She got along wonderfully with Maddy, paid the utility bills while David covered the mortgage and other expenses, and had brought stability to his life after years of focused single parenting. Throughout Maddy's crisis, David had kept Vera informed, believing her supportive responses meant they were navigating this together. But when he explained the long-term plan that Maddy, her boyfriend, and soon a baby would be living in their home for the foreseeable future, Vera's supportive facade crumbled. "If I wanted to raise a baby, I'd have one of my own," she snapped, her voice cutting through the kitchen where they'd shared so many peaceful mornings. "I didn't sign up for this." The ultimatum came swift and brutal. Kick Maddy out, or Vera would leave. When David refused to abandon his pregnant daughter, explaining that Maddy would always be his priority, Vera's anger turned to cold manipulation. She threatened to move out, then grew furious when David simply said he understood her position. Now, the house that had once been filled with laughter and easy companionship had become a minefield of tension. Vera still lived there, sleeping in David's bed, eating his food, using his utilities, but treated both father and daughter with icy disdain. She avoided them when possible, made cutting remarks when she couldn't, and created an atmosphere so toxic that even Maddy, already fragile from hormones and stress, walked on eggshells in her own home. David watched his pregnant daughter trying to make herself invisible in the house where she'd grown up, saw how she flinched when Vera entered a room, noticed how she ate her meals quickly and retreated to her bedroom. The joy that should have accompanied preparing for his first grandchild was overshadowed by the daily emotional warfare playing out under his roof. Every morning, David woke to the same impossible choice: the woman he'd planned to propose to, or the daughter who needed him more than ever. Every evening, he fell asleep to the sound of Vera's pointed sighs and Maddy's muffled tears through the thin walls. The man who had once felt blessed to have both the love of his life and his beloved daughter under the same roof now wondered if trying to hold on to both would ultimately cost him everything that mattered. What do you think David should do? Is Vera being unreasonable? Or does she have a right to not want to live with a baby? Should David choose his daughter or his relationship? Share your thoughts and feelings below. We'd love to hear how you'd handle this impossible situation.